Well, good morning. How are you all today? And welcome to Integrative Preparedness. Hey, thank you all for your thoughts and wishes and prayers. And yes, my eye is getting better. No, I didn't get in a fight. I had eye surgery, and I think I'm seeing better out of it every day. And I'm very thankful. It's amazing what they can do nowadays, right? We're lucky to live in a time where they have the ability to make certain medical interventions that 100 years ago would have been out of luck, right? Okay. Well, I want to talk today about. I started off my day. Let me because the title will probably tell you. I want to talk about God, guns, and money. Started off my day talking to a couple of my favorite people. A couple of Marks. It's amazing to me how many of the people that I really like are named Mark. You know, so one of them is my real my good buddy, the guy who's been with me for years, Mark. The first one, for those of you over on Patreon, had a chance to talk to Mark Harrison this morning. Great guy. I was talking to my buddy Mark, my best buddy Mark, and we were talking all sorts of things, right? And it, of course, got back to preparedness. He is part of, well, I won't say he's part of my circle of friends. He is part of the nucleus of my circle of friends. Very smart guy. And we have been in this together for a long time. So we got around to talking about, what's going on in the world. And and then, of course, it always gets back to, and he's developing some things. I'll tell you right now, he's developing some preparedness things. I'm not going to tell you what they are. I'll tell you someday. We got to talking about that. And then we got to talking about the economy and how everybody's talking, about is, because I know. Have you already watched all of the financial experts that are on YouTube this morning talking about, what it means with interest rates going up and down and all that? I would suggest that you have a couple of suggestions. First off, if you're going to talk about this stuff, know what you're talking about. Seriously, because you'll not only mislead yourself, you'll mislead other people. Okay, and then to the people who are watching, be careful who you listen to. It's not that difficult to educate yourself as far as economics and finance. And a lot of it's just common sense, and a lot of it is following trends and understanding, what affects what and all that. You don't have to get, and I know that most people don't want to go into that. They don't want to take the time. I get it. But just be careful who you listen to. So we were talking about, the economy and finances and how nuts people are going about certain things that are going on. And that, of course, led us to the so-called, continuous argument over fiat currency versus gold and Bitcoin and all that, crypto and, all that kind of stuff. Interesting. And I enjoy talking to people who actually think, rather than just parrot back what they've heard 9 million times. And so we were talking about that. And he said, one of the first things that I learned, he said, from your book, your first book. Anyway, Mark was the one who I gave him my very first book, The Reversion, to to ask him to check it. I got when you write a book, you send it off to the publisher. Oh, some of you may not know what I'm talking about. I'll just show you this, and I'll tell you a little bit more later. It's my books. The first one of my books was The Reversion. I teach, if you're not familiar with me, I've lived a preparedness life for 50, 60 years. I teach it. I write books about it. Tell you how to get them a little bit later, if you'd like, and you should. If you haven't read them, you'll be surprised how much you will learn, and you'll love the story. But in my very first book, The Reversion, when you write a book, send it off to the printer, the publisher, and you get a copy for you to go through and make sure that everything's set up right, and then you go through and you try to find all your typos, And so I got a couple of extras, gave one to Kelly, my wife, and gave one to Mark. And I said, would you go through this and see, because he's a very smart guy, would you go through this and find all the typos and things that I need to change? Because I'm also not the world's best speller. I'm pretty good shot, but I'm not that good a speller. And being a good shot might help when it all falls apart, but right now, when you write books, being a good speller helps. So anyway, he had it for about a week, and then he brought it back to me, and there's all these markings and everything. And I said, good, man, he found all my mistakes. Nope. He said he got so caught up in the story, he forgot to start checking for typos. But he had all these markings, and like it would say, well, why did he do this? And then, 3 pages later, I'd see him mark some, oh, that's why he did that. And he had it all through the book. It was very cool. And so anyway, we're talking about, he says, one of the first lessons, probably the first lesson in my first book. Let me hold it up again to remind you, in the reversion. The first lesson is money. And, that's not the first thing that most people think about when it comes to preparedness. Now, let me intersperse here that the very first thing is God. I get a lot of comments from whenever I talk about certain things, and I'll get a lot of comments that say, but if you don't know God, all of your preparations are for naught. And I will agree, and that just means you haven't listened to me very much, okay? That is a given. God and knowing God through his son, Jesus Christ, is who's calling me when I'm making a video? I don't know. Is the number one preparedness. Prep, okay? Because that's your eternal life, not just your life here, but also he guides you here. Okay, so now having accepted that, and also let me say this. I've heard people say, well, I don't need to prepare because Jesus is coming. Well, you don't know when Jesus is coming. He told you you're not going to know. So get off of that horse. Or God's going to take care of me. Well, he could, and he might. He might give you 40 years of manna. He might part a sea for you. But he has also told you to prepare. And while we're on this, I will always go back to the night Jesus was arrested, and he told his disciples. Now, if it's good enough for his disciples, it's good enough for you, all right? And he said, I'm going away. I'm not going to be here with you anymore. And what he meant, of course, was physically. He said, when I was with you, did you want for anything? And they said, no, Lord, we didn't. He says, but now I am going away, and I'm not going to be here with you anymore. For therefore, take your purse and your scrip. What does that mean? That means take your equipment, your supplies, your purse, the thing in your traveling bag, your go bag, and your scrip, your money. And then he said, and he who is without a sword, let him sell his garment and buy one. Now, what did that mean? That means you're going to need to be able to defend yourself. Simple as that. I had a comment the other day. Somebody said, well, Jesus said if you have 2 cloaks, sell one and buy a sword. That's not what it says. There are so many instances of people misquoting the Bible. Okay. No, sell your garment, which was a or cloak. It's the same thing. The very important piece of their apparel. They slept in it. They kept warm in it, or whatever, and buy a sword. So he has said, God through his son Jesus has said, you prepare here on earth. Okay, so hopefully we've got that cleared up now, don't we? Hope so. But next to that, what did he say? You take your script, money. So the first lesson, and most people will say, well, you need your beans and your rice and your bullets and your Band-Aids and your this and your that and everything. Well, how do you get that stuff? How do you get that stuff? And yet I also see a lot of people, well, I can't afford this, or I don't have the money for that. And my question is, why not? You see, you have totally overlooked the second rule of preparedness. What's that, Steve? I didn't know there were rules to preparedness. Well, I just made it up. Maybe I'll make a book on it. The rules of preparedness. We'll see. And that is, after God, you need to be able to get the things you need. But Steve, it's important to be able to get by with nothing. I got a piece of string and a stick and a rock, and I can survive in the woods, and no, you can't. No, you can't. What have you? Well, I can salvage. I can do this. Yeah, you can. You're not going to have You're not going to be near where somebody is who can actually go out and buy stuff. Okay. So the very first lesson, those of you who have read it know what I'm talking about. Jim Wyatt finds himself standing in a line at a restaurant in Kansas City. It used to be called Oklahoma Joe's. Nobody knows why it was called Oklahoma Joe's since it's in Kansas City, but they have since changed it to Joe's Kansas City. And it's at the one at 47th and Mission Road. And he's standing in line waiting for some barbecue. And Joe's is a famous barbecue place in Kansas City, one of my favorites. Matter of fact, Mark and I go there all the time and go in there next week probably. He's standing in line and the lights go out. So everybody's punching their phones, wondering their phones aren't working. And it's the very first scene in the reversion. And maybe I should read it to you. Let me read it. Would you like to hear a paragraph? If I can find it real quickly here. Would you like to hear? Let's see. Okay. Let's see here. So all the lights go out and everybody's saying, what the heck is going on? And here comes, so Wyatt stood there watching and listening, thinking to himself, Wyatt being Jim Wyatt, thinking to himself, when the manager came out and banged on the counter. Sorry, folks, he said, we're not sure what the deal is, but hopefully it'll get fixed pretty quick. Until then, our registers, drink machines, and anything else electrical is out. That means we can't take credit or debit cards till the power comes back on. Sorry. He looked over the crowd. For those paying with cash, we can still serve orders with what's already made up. Several people in front of him and a large number behind him started to dwindle away, grumbling, which put Wyatt closer to ordering. He watched the growing irritation around him as he waited his turn, then getting to the counter, adjusted his order in light of what he thought might be happening. You have plenty of ribs, he asked the manager. The man nodded. Yeah, we're good on meat through lunch. Fryer stuff will run out soon, though. Okay, give me 6 slabs, 4 large beef sandwiches, a quart of beans, and a quart of coleslaw. The man squinted at him. You got cash, right? Yep. Okay. He had cash. What did he have? Cash. You know, that worthless fiat currency, right? Do you know gold is fiat currency too? Somebody will jump on here and say, it's not fiat currency, it's God's money. What's fiat currency? I'll give you a little, I didn't mean to get off on this, but I may as well. You see, if Jim Wyatt had gone up there to the counter and said, I've got some gold, what do you think the guy would have said? He would have laughed. I don't want gold. You got cash? See, that's the thing. Fiat currency is something that's not backed by anything. And the only thing that gold is backed by is the same thing that the dollar is backed by, or seashells, or seeds, or anything else, and that is people's desire to have it. And people's desire to have something depends on how useful it is in the situation they need it. See, there's your Econ 101 right there. So he had cash, and then he had like 25 miles to get back home, and his car wasn't running, and because it was a CME, and back then we thought that all the cars wouldn't work. So he walked down a block with his bag full. He got all the stuff out of his car, got his get home bag, his JIC bag we call it, just in case, JIC, and filled. He always carried a second pack with him like I do. Put all the barbecue in that, strapped it on, and remembered there was a thrift store down the block, and walked down there and found a mountain bike that still had air in the tires, was able to make a deal with them, giving them some cash for the bike, because, people figure everything's going to come back on. And pedaled his way back home, turned a whole day trip, and maybe more, into a 3-4 hour trip. So cash is what did that. Now what I'm getting around to here is, if you read my series, or if you think about really the fall of the collapse of whatever, people are thinking about the collapse of the financial system now. How much help do you think your guns are going to be? Because this is a point that Mark made to me today. He says, so many people, they go immediately. He says, too few people thinking about the importance of money, of cash. They're thinking about their guns, they're thinking about ammo. We used to work at a hospital together, and there was a lot of the guys there that were involved in preparedness. And you know what they were always talking about? Guns. Always talking about guns and ammo. What's the best? You know what hardly any of them talked about? Money. Right. If you don't have your money situation in order, you are way behind where you ought to be in your preparedness. It's as simple as that. A lot of people get upset when I say that. Why? If you go, because I'm teaching you something here, right? I'm giving you good information as a result of many years of experience and an understanding of the system. So I don't understand why people are upset when I say these things, but they are. Well, I do understand. Let me give you an insight into why people are upset. You know why people are upset when I talk about that? Because they haven't thought about it, or they don't want to work towards that. How much easier to talk about guns than to increase your income streams, right? To make more money, to actually get out there and to be able to invest in the things. See, when you're spending money on things that are going to help you stay alive and live better in the future, and the two are totally different. You may never be threatened. Your life may never be threatened. The whole world may never fall apart during your lifetime. But to live better, if you're spending money on that, you're investing. Okay, and it's a much greater return than gold. So people don't want to see it takes work. And that's what upsets people. So if you're one of those who is not upset by the truth, well, you're already farther down the road than many. Okay. So realize that and so much when I talk about, I pointed out, I reminded Mark, I said, there is violence in my books. There are times when people have to be shot, right? But you know what? There's a lot more times when people have to be fed. Right? Yeah. Stonemont, which is the name of the place that Jim Wyatt's family has, as a result of and there's a line in there that I explain. Why did they have Stonemont? And a lot of people said, well, not everybody can have that. Well, yeah, you can. It's just a matter of the choices that you've made. Okay. Like I said, I was just talking to Mark Harrison earlier. He's got something pretty right at it. And I know many people who do. It's a matter of the choices. And I say in my first book, as Jim was pedaling his way home, he said he was thinking about where they lived, and it was a result of hard work and good decisions. And that wisdom comes from God. So there we have God again. And it wasn't the result of a bunch of worrying, a bunch of fretting, and a bunch of anxiety. It was a matter of making good decisions and working hard. So as a result of that, they had a good place that, as a result of their preparedness, not only were they able to continue living a good life along with their kids, but they were able to help other people as other people came to them. And then they reached out to find other people that needed help. And that's also something that's glaringly absent in many of the preparedness comments that I hear. The ones that say, well, I got mine and nobody else better come and expect me to take care of them. Really? My gracious. You're here to help people. You're supposed to be. So if you don't feel that way, give it a long thought and read a little bit more about what Jesus said. So that's what enabled them. And this is what enables other people. All through the book, people are being helped. Not with guns, sometimes with guns. More often with the ability of people to help them, because the helpers have what it takes to help. And really, what's better than that? What is better than helping people? Now, you don't want to help the wrong people. And I know I'll get a couple on here that says, I learned my lesson and people can't be trusted and you shouldn't help. And oh, that's a horrible, horrible way to think. Mark and I were talking about this, and he says, it took him a long time to kind of soften his view of the world. He says, because he and I have backgrounds that we saw the worst of the world. And it can sour you on people, and you don't think that most of them are worth helping. But that's because of the well, it's just not the right way to think. It's because of the people you've been around, and you get hard, and you shouldn't be that way. I'll take it back to Jesus again. You think he hadn't seen all the horrible things in life? Did that turn him away from helping people? Of course not. But you say, well, he was God. Well, he was here showing us how to be. He was trying to show us what we should be like. So get rid of your old hard heart and say, how can I help other people when they need it? And a lot of that is having the stuff that they would need, and a lot of that comes from being able to buy it. If people come to you starving, I'm not going to help them say, well, I can build you a lean-to in the woods. How about, well, I've got extra food I can feed you. Okay? So, all through that, it is very important. And even though I put money probably in the third spot, now money can't buy God, but God will direct you in the proper way to do what you should do. You're not going to need guns near as much as you're going to need your next meal or to help somebody else. And guns take money, right? So the main lesson here is, if you haven't put money in its proper perspective in your preparedness pyramid, you're way behind. You're falling way behind. And here's another thing that too many people who improperly base their opinions on the Bible say, well, you can't serve God and money. That's true. That has nothing to do with making money. You shouldn't serve money. You should serve God. You should understand that money makes the economic world go around. And if you're not doing your best to be in your best situation so that you can not only take care of yourself and aren't a burden to others, but to help other people, you're just not doing everything you could. So, Uncle Steve, again, instead of telling you that you need beans and rice and this new fancy knife and new whatever, this new cool piece of equipment or a red dot, taking you back to the things that are basic isn't important. And that is supporting yourself in the world God gave you and enabling yourself to help others. That's what it's all about. Do you remember the story of the Good Samaritan? I'll throw this in there. See, the reason that I throw a lot of this stuff in here is because I have so many people minimizing the message when I try to talk about increasing your income streams and your wealth. And they try to use the Bible to dispute it. And they don't understand what the Bible says. And that's too, that's all too common. Good Samaritan. Guy gets sick, falls, he's robbed, he's beaten up by robbers along the road. A couple of people, so-called good people, pass him by. A Samaritan, the despised Samaritans, comes by, picks him up, takes him into an inn, and he says, patch him up, Here's some money. Some what, Steve? Some what? Some money. Take care of it. And on my way back, if it has cost you more than I've given you, let me know, and I will give you more. He didn't say, I got this cool new piece of gear. Okay? Money is important. Increase your ability to make it. Don't stay stagnant. Because if you stay stagnant, you're playing a defensive game. And you should be able to affect the world around you, not just try to hide. Should I use another biblical reference here? Why not, Steve? You're on a roll, right? I may as well, because again, I get so many people coming on and saying, yeah, but this and that. Okay. You're meant to be salt and light. How about that? If salt has lost its saltiness, it's no good for anything but to be thrown underfoot and trampled, right? You're to be the light of the world. And who, having lit a candle, places it under a bushel? You put it on a lampstand so it can provide light to the world around it. You see, that was Jesus telling you. You are not supposed to hide. You are not supposed to hide away from the world. You're not supposed to separate yourself from the world. Yes, you're supposed to be in the world, but not of the world, right? But in the world. You are supposed to live your life, and I transpose this into preparedness, in such a way that you have a positive effect on the world around you. Think about it. You can have a more positive effect. It's one thing when, and also another story, okay? Another biblical story. Somebody comes to you and they're singing the blues, right? And he says, don't just say, okay, I'm praying for you. Help them. Help them. How are you going to help them? Now, I understand. There are some professional needy people who, for some reason, think that it's their lot in life to give everybody else plenty of opportunities to help them, right? But if it's a real situation, you want to help them. People across the street. Guy had a big, high-paying job. Lost his job. This is some time back. Lost his job. They were very worried. I was able to go over and say, hey, don't worry about food. I got plenty. You don't have to spend your savings on food. Let me know what you need. Now, I'm not making myself out to be a big deal here. Actually, they didn't ask me for any. They didn't need any, but I was there. I was going to be able to supply it if they needed it. That's part of preparedness. So, my message here is, God's number one. Guns, you're not going to need that much. Money, you need every day. And it not only empowers you in your life, but it empowers you to help others. It is by no way not important. It is vitally important. So assume the responsibility. And if you really want to be a preparedness-minded person, increase your income, either by what you do or by increasing your income streams, so that you will be better prepared and you'll be able to help others when they need it. Okay? One more reminder, if you'd like to read my books, the Stonemont series, you can always get them on Amazon. They get them to you quick, and that link is down below. But the better way to do it, and the way that I love you to do it, is to order them directly from me through our website, stonemont.us. And then I get to sign them for you and write a note in there for you and everything, and then we get them to you. I don't get them to you as quickly as Amazon does, I'll be honest. Sometimes I do and sometimes I don't. Depends on if I've run out. I happen to have them in stock right now. We got orders coming in all the time. I know I'll put in another order, then I'll wait for them. But if you'd like to get them directly from me. And as the Stonemont series, the reversion, the revival, the renewal, an appeal to heaven, the blessings of freedom, hostages to fortune, and the very latest one, I got these mixed up. On wings like eagles. And that also is from the Bible. And if you buy the whole set, which we give you a nice discount on, we send the Stonemont notebook to you. And I'll read something that on the back here kind of fits in with what we're saying. Right down there. Except the Lord build the house, they labor in vain that build it. Except the Lord keep the city, the watchman waketh, but in vain. That's Psalm 127:1. And on the front, here's the secret. Commit thy works unto the Lord, and thy thoughts shall be established, which means commit your work to the Lord, and your plans will succeed. That's Proverbs 16:3. But what does that mean? Your works, what you do. Commit them to Him, and He'll bless them. Okay? So, if you want those, order them through stonemont.us, and I will love signing them for you, and you'll learn a lot, and you will love the story. Okay? Get out there, better yourself. Realize it's in your hands. You can do what you want. If you're doing it for the right reason, we need more people in this world doing this for the right reason. Not out of greed, but out of their responsibility to themselves and their fellow man. Okay? Y'all have a good one. Remember that we prepare well today in order to live well tomorrow, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.